So, welcome out to today's interview focused on current labor struggles in today's day and age. My name is Anthony Henderson, and the project I'm working on is a project between UMass Lowell, LTC, and our guest star today, Starr.
Thank you.
So today we'll be discussing just struggles in today's workforce. So Ed, you're with the IBEW, which stands for the International Brotherhood of Electrical Workers.
Yes, I am. I've been there for 28 years.
28 years, that's a long time.
Yes.
Do you mind telling us what you do there?
So right now I am what they call an international representative. I work for the IBEW out of Washington covering the New England area, the 2nd District. I work for the Vice President for New England, the 5 states, which is International Vice President Michael Monahan. So I work on the staff as a representative for the IBEW International.
Okay. And how'd you get into this type of work?
So I started years ago as I was a worker in the IBEW in what they call a union local. Each area of the country has different jurisdictions and different union locals. And I was a telephone company employee. I was a technician with the telephone company and worked my way up doing various activities. And in 2006, as a worker, working on FiOS, working in the manholes as a technician in this area, 2006 I ran for an election for the union, to be on the union, to be a union representative for the local 2321, which is the Merrimack Valley and North Shore. And I was elected in 2006 to serve as the chief negotiator and principal officer of the labor union, representing 1,200 workers, again, in the Merrimack Valley and North Shore. So I've been working full-time for the IBEW, starting out with the union local up in this area, mainly working in negotiating contracts with Verizon. And a phenomenal job and experience, very busy job, working the day-to-day activities, helping the workers, people get in trouble, or, they need help from the union. So I did that when I wasn't in negotiations. But a year ago, I was asked by the IBEW International to come on to the staff, basically working as an assistant to the vice president for the New England area, helping out all of the locals now, not just the one local where I was elected. Now I serve as a representative on the staff to go around, all throughout New England, assisting with, whatever political, legislative, legal, or other negotiations, stuff like that, where I help the locals do their day-to-day operations and activities. So it's a tremendous responsibility. It's a phenomenal experience, and it's again helping the union leaders now for any different occupation, whether it's telephone, electrical, manufacturing, or any of the other types of industries that the IBEW works with.
Yeah, so sounds interesting.
Yeah.
I want to dive right into this. So you said you went around, you were like basically an extra hand when discussing like issues with workers and their employers and all that. I just wanted to know, are you handling any major issues now?
So right now I'm working on helping a couple of the different union locals around New England. I just finished up with one of the union locals up in Maine with negotiations for a small contract up there. I'm working on with another union, helping their union leaders negotiate another contract. And right now we have Maine, New Hampshire, and Vermont in the telephone side of the business. The workers in the IBEW work for a company called Fairpoint Communications. Used to be a Verizon local. Verizon sold off the 3 states, Maine, New Hampshire, and Vermont, to Fairpoint. And now that was in 2009 or so. And now Fairpoint is looking to sell their operations to this company called Consolidated Communications out of Illinois. So there's legislative and political meetings that are happening, hearings with the regulatory bodies in Maine, New Hampshire, and Vermont, where the regulators that control the state and the infrastructure for the telecommunications system, they have hearings to decide whether they're going to approve the sale and let Fairpoint sell this, the company and their property and their assets and telephone lines and so forth, if they can sell it to Consolidated. So right now the unions have an interest in that. So I'm working, assisting with the locals, preparing, questions and parts of testimony for hearings, because there's significant concerns that when you get a company to take you over, they could affect the workers, So right now, they could lose another 10% of the workforce, right? When they buy this company, they're going to need to save some money, and they've already basically told these 3 states, we're going to cut costs. That's how we're going to manage the operations. And, when they cut costs, they usually lose more bodies, right? And that's IBEW members. So I'm working with these union leaders from the 3 different states, trying to prepare and work with the state regulators as well as the company in these negotiations that are going on before the sale.
Now, is every negotiation you do unique to the company?
Oh yes, absolutely. Yeah. So we have different companies, all sizes, right? You talk about Verizon. I did 4 contracts with them, part of a bargaining team representing workers from Maine to Virginia. So we sat at the table. My first contract was a very successful one. That's when Fios was first coming out with Verizon. So the contract was good, the relationship was good with the employer, and after that, the next contract was in 2011. We sat in negotiations for 14 months. There was a 2-week strike after 4 months. We came back in 2011 and basically stayed at home at the hotel in New York the whole time, taking time off for some weekends to come home and some holidays. But we ended up in federal mediation down in Washington, D.C. Again, another phenomenal experience working with the federal mediators that are trying to get both sides to come to an agreement. So that was with the Verizon contract. Obviously, we had the contract last year where I sat at the table for another 10 months, right, until we had a 7-week strike, right? So I was transitioning from my negotiator role to the staff level role now, helping all the locals. So that was pretty unique. Some of these other contracts that I talked about that I'm assisting with, smaller work groups, 38 technicians, 6 technicians for another company, So it depends on the size of the company and the complexities of the negotiations on how you deal with the employer during these negotiations. But it's a unique experience for every day is a unique experience, put it that way, working on the many different things.
Yeah, of course. So the IBEW, it serves and protects over 750,000 workers, from my understanding.
Yep.
How protected are these workers under the union?
Well, under the union in general, I think that as you see, companies that want to do what they can to lower wages for workers, make more money. It's only natural that a company wants to, especially a company that's publicly traded, their responsibility is to the shareholder. Yeah. So the more money they can extract out of the operations in the business and put it back towards the shareholder is in benefit to the company. So what a union does is basically says, the workers want a share of the profit, right? They want a share of their hard work and their labor. The IBEW has been very good for the families, the working families that they have. So we have different branches and jurisdictions where members are always seeking out, the IBEW for representation. In New Jersey, we just organized 400 attorney generals that work across the state. So they're lawyers, right, that watched the rest of the workers in the state of New Jersey get raises because they were in unions, and the attorneys, weren't worked for years without any significant pay increase at all. So they chose representation with the IBEW. Now you say, what do lawyers know about joining an electrical union? And it was one of the first things when they did approach us. They approached us because of our political strength, right? Our respect in the communities. IBEW does a lot of charitable work, right? All the union locals are involved heavily and deeply in the communities in which they represent working families, right? So the IBEW was a choice for them. They didn't have a lawyer problem. They had a employer problem, right?
Yeah.
They weren't getting taken care of. So they joined. The same thing happened in California with attorneys. We are becoming more of a professional union where workers that may thought of themselves as, management, or I'm too, my job is to higher classification than a union worker. Well, now they're looking at to have that bond of a union to back you and to represent you, not only with your employer, but it sometimes there's needs for political help, right? So the IBEW has done very well across the country, growing the ranks. Professional architects now, engineers, hospital technologists, right? Attorneys are joining with electricians and telephone workers, right? We have members that work at NASA, so.
All over the place.
So
okay.
Power companies, nuclear power plants. So we're a very, very well-run organization from the top down, and we support the workers, and we support the employers too, because we want the employer to be successful. So the workers can share in that success, right? So
as long as everyone's happy.
we have the IBEW has a good name and a good brand that's well recognized throughout the country.
Okay. And so the main focus of the union is to protect the worker, right?
Yep.
All right. So from your personal experience, what are some of the ways that you guys couldn't protect them?
Couldn't?
Yeah.
Oh, if a company is isn't doing good financially, right? You'll see where usually there are a lot of protections in union. Now we're talking general, right? So you're a worker. It could be in manufacturing. You're making cups, but you're in the IBEW. Well, the cup business isn't too good, right? They can't keep the head count. A lot of union contracts, a lot of IBEW contracts have provisions in them if, God forbid, they have to lay off or downsize, right? So, and a lot of companies are doing that. So typically before a worker that's in the union that's protected would get laid off, maybe there's other jobs that we can find working with the employee to take a downgrade or to keep the person employed, right? So you'll see in a lot of union contracts, there's steps that have to be followed before a company can lay off. In the telephone world, we have job security, right? That's one thing the company doesn't want. They gave it to us, or we negotiated it. I shouldn't say they gave it to us because we fought for everything we have in a contract, right? Where we have job security. So even if this part of the business isn't doing well in the telephone world, from some of the contracts that we do have, then the employer has to work with the union to retrain employees, reskill them, and put them in other parts of the business where they could use them. So that's an example where we may not be able to protect workers, right? Because there's outside economic conditions with an employer that just can't withstand that, right? So, but before they get there, and then even when there is cases where there's layoffs, we bring in some rapid response teams, sit with the workers, work with the AFL-CIO, which is like the union of all unions, right? It's an organization that the IBEW belongs to, where we work in the communities, trying to help people with filing for unemployment, assistance if they need it. Some families still need it, right? Healthcare and so forth, and subsidies. So we work with them with the various state agencies if need be. And we also, will help them, with workshops to find, whether it's resume writing or finding some of the resources they need if worst case scenario is that they wouldn't be able to stay employed here at an employer. That's probably the worst case scenario, is if something happens and the employer is forced to lay off, or even in some cases there's where employers go out of business, right? So That would be like the worst case scenario, and
Yeah.
no union can help you then. It's just help you save a job that's not surviving on its own. The other part of that would be then, at least you're in a union, access to resources, perhaps even other jobs with other employers, once you're an IBEW member.
So IBEW seems it's very secure for its workers and all that.
Absolutely, right. And you get out of it what you put into it, I think, you know. So for a lot of workers that, you know, I would encourage anybody that's, you know, that's already in a union is that you become active. That's the only way, you know, there are a lot of union members and families that belong to unions where maybe they're not too participatory in what's going on with the union, but it's really, the union is you. It's all of us together acting in concert, right? Fighting for what we believe in, asking for our piece of the pie. So the unions in general are much more stronger when the union members are active, right? Saying, you know, yeah, I'm with the union. You know, whether it's voting for candidates, whether in the city of Lowell, state of Massachusetts, or even at the federal level, that best protect worker rights, right? Or working families, issues that are, you know, that affect us. So, you know, I would encourage anybody that's not in a union to definitely, you know, would look at it. I mean, you're reading more and more today. We're bringing back jobs, supposedly, right?
Yeah.
But these jobs, you know, when you do have unions, there are protections that can keep some of that work in the United States, right? So,
Of course, unions are a necessity. In
I believe
everyday
so,
life.
yes.
Yeah. So you've talked about traveling to Washington, D.C., to Illinois. You know, it's very exciting traveling nationwide, just, you know, deal with these type of things. I know you talked to me about the biggest contract you spent 14 months in New York, was it?
Yep.
So was that the biggest issue you've ever dealt with? Was that?
Well, yeah, that was probably the last two contracts with Verizon. Now you're talking a company that's, you know, a Fortune 10 company, right? One of the top 10, 15 companies in the world, which makes a lot of money, right? Right. So what was unfortunate is that despite the profit that they make, Verizon, at least in this case, is getting out of the landline business, right? So a lot of people don't have telephones that go to the home, right, anymore. They either use their wireless or they'll go to a competitor, right? We're in an age now where competition is stiff. Comcast will give you the TV, the internet, and the home phone, right? Before we as telephone workers and the telephone company used to be the only game in town. But now people are using their cells, what they call cutting the cord, going into the house. So Verizon has come up with a plan where they get into the wireless as well as the fiber optics, right, to the home to provide you the best cable and internet experience there is in the world on fiber optics, right? So the company is changing, and unfortunately, the workers that are there, they're not, a lot of the areas, wireless type technologies and stuff, companies like Verizon, AT&T, or any of the telephone companies that are transitioning into a more highly technical company are not hiring from within the community. So a young man like yourself, which was me 30 years ago, walking in, getting signed up, started as an operator, worked myself up to tech. There was always opportunities to grow within the company because they were getting into different technologies. Now, Verizon, AT&T, all these major big telephone companies are not. They're using contractors, subcontractors. They come from out of state. They're not in the union. So they're working on different parts of the new technologies, while the union workers that are left are working on the remaining technology that's still left, right? Which is kind of like dying, right?
Yeah.
So it's up to us now as union leaders and workers is to try to, what they call, organize the rest of the business, the rest of the industry, right? The telecommunications industry, telephones, whether it's cell phone or the internet or anything you can do with, with smartphones and tablets and so forth. That's the future technology of the generations where we need to see workers not only get these jobs from, if they're doing work in Lowell, instead of bringing contractors in from around the state, because these companies don't want to hire people from here to have them full-time to work on the wires or the cell phones or the cell towers in Lowell. The unions are advocating for keep hiring workers in the community. Right? That's what we were founded on. But that's not the case, and it's not just like Verizon, it's other companies, and it's not only in telephone, right? You have other companies that, will shut down leave here and go down south and work. Why? Because they can get workers to do it cheaper. So as much as, there's a big hype of work coming back into the country, it's remains to be seen what type of work is it, right? Is it enough for you to bring up a family, and get an education and have go on vacations, right? Take care of your kids, growing up. So those are the types of jobs. And those, quite frankly, the best jobs that they are union type jobs, right? Where it's taking people that just come out of high school and with no opportunity for college, right? At least that was my case. You get into a company and a union that can take care of you and provide you training, provide you benefits, right? Educational benefits. I was able to go to law school, go get my master's degree, go get my bachelor's degree, right? So I worked my way up as a telephone company technician, but those are benefits that the union negotiated with the company for us. So I took advantage of that, and it's helped me, and I did that to help me to do the job I do today,
Of course. Yeah, so it seems like, everyone in the union should probably be, acting to get the union together, because it seems like there's many advantages that can come from it. That's cool. So I want to bring it back a little bit. We talked about, you said the decline of like landlines. So have you seen in your personal experience any how the decline of landlines or the decline of telecommunication in general affects the workers?
Well, yeah, so they're not hiring, right? I mean, you'll see, so this last contract with Verizon that, contract was finalized after a 7-week strike last June when we came back to work. Part of the big hype, and that was what we considered a strike that we won, because it was all about bringing jobs back to this country. So take Lowell, for example. There's a call center in Lowell, right? A lot of that work over the years has migrated or changed where they work either contractors or they send the work with a flip of a switch. Instead of someone in Lowell picking up to handle your call as a customer, they can send it to the Philippines, down south, North Carolina, non-union right-to-work state, right? Cheaper to pay the workers. Dominican Republic, India, Philippines. So again, those are where these major call centers are. That Verizon and other companies like Verizon are offshoring all these types of jobs. They were good-paying jobs when they're here. They're not the same when they send them overseas. So we were able to negotiate some jobs as part of the contract coming back. Not enough. I mean, I think they got 2 dozen jobs in Lowell, So we have call centers in Massachusetts, down in Taunton, down in Boston, right out in Western Mass. There's smaller call centers. But those jobs typically, other than us, having some sort of public pressure for the employer to give us a few jobs, right, which they hire people from the community, it's not nothing that they would do on their own, right? They could just say, hey, we got tens of thousands of jobs overseas and all these places that I mentioned, and if they were if these types of employers were conscious about keeping Americans working, right, keeping these jobs here, raising the standard of living in the communities in which they do business by hiring workers. But the reason they don't do that is because they have to pay you more than what they would pay someone working in another foreign country, right?
Yeah. Right.
So that's one of the significant things in this industry, and we see it again in manufacturing and other types things where they have these employers can again flip a switch and move the work. It might be cheaper than to shut down this factory and move it somewhere. We've seen that in the news. That happens. So we're maintaining the level that we have of workers, and there is some examples of where the IBEW has worked with the employers. We have what's called the Code of Excellence, right, where we as union workers or union international would train the workers in what it's like to be, what you should be to be a union member. You should, typically today, some of the, what I'll call younger union members or younger workers that are in the IBEW, they came in and they get good pay and good benefits, right? Medical care, right? Pensions, health, the health care, the 401k, the tuition assistance. So a younger person coming into to work for a Verizon or another company don't recognize that the employer didn't give you that. That was something that I did when I was a young guy, going on strike to keep that benefit that you have now for nothing, So we're trying as a union to say, hey, you need to, recognize that the things that you do have, because we're in a union, it's because of what the people did before us, and now you have to give back. You got to give back to the union, and you have to give back to the employer. We want you to be a good union member and a good employer. That worked in a case with one of the lighting manufacturers that makes lights. They closed the plant because it wasn't doing well. They brought all the work here because these workers were trained by the IBEW in how to be better workers and better union members, and they became more efficient and could do it for a better price. The employer brought the work here. So the unions, where some people may think is part of the problem, can be part of the solution.
So unions not only the way to, they don't only help you get out of problems, but they also give you, they give you basically an extra hand, basically.
Yes. Yep.
Seems like it. So how does one join the organization?
So to join the IBEW or any union, if you are already employed somewhere, and what we have is what we call organizing drives. We'll get calls from workers that are disgruntled, or something happens, there's been layoffs, or they're not treating the workers right, companies. They'll call us, we'll send in, myself and some people from the New England area to sit with you to talk about what your issues are. And if 30% of the group, so if you have 100 workers and 30% want to sign a card, the card basically says, you want to be represented by the IBEW. We take that card and we turn it into the National Labor Relations Board, the NLRB, which is the government agency that oversees elections for unions, right? The company doesn't see it, but the worker gets scared sometimes that you're going to show, now that my boss is going to know I'm talking to a union. No, that doesn't happen that way. So we will have union elections. We've had quite a few of them where workers are deciding to join the union, and other places where the employer, if they hire National Grid, Verizon, you get employed by them, and then you are in the union for that area. Electricians, they put on trade schools, they train their own workers, and then they go out and get contractors to use IBEW electricians or construction workers.
Okay, great. Well, thank you for coming out today, Ed.
My pleasure.
I appreciate it.
Thank you.
My name's Anthony Henderson. I'm here with Ed Starr, International Representative of IBEW, and we wanted to thank you for watching.
Thank you.